Welcome to part 2 of the series for a simple introduction to Django and React. In the last video, I showed you how you could set up Django and React to create a simple application that uses an API, more specifically the Django REST framework, which provides that for us, and then React as the front end. And so thank you to everybody who commented on the video and just in general asked questions about it. So in this video, I decided to expand a little bit more on it. If you haven't watched the last video, then please do so. The link is in the description of this video. And at the end of the video, I gave you a challenge, which was to create the create API view and the update API view. So at the moment, all we have is a list API view and a retrieve API view, meaning you can only list out the articles and list the detail or view the detail of an article, a specific article. So in this one, we're going to expand on that and add the create view and the update view. And so let's get started with that. So here I am on GitHub. I'm at the Just Django account, and I've gone to the DJ React repository. And here, if you click on clone or download, you can see the link to this repository here, and just copy that. And here I am inside Visual Studio Code. And here I'm just going to open up a terminal, and I'm going to make a directory which we'll just call DJ React. And I'm going to change into that directory and initiate it as a Git repository. If you don't have Git installed, you could also just download this as a zip folder and then get started from that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say git remote add origin, and I'm going to paste that link there. And then I'm going to say git pull origin master. So this will pull that repository into this directory. And now if we list everything out, we can see we have the README, the backend, the front end, and this thumbnail. And so now I'm going to remove the Git repository because we have all the files. So I'm going to say rm-rf.git. And now if I were to say change directory into .git, this would work if this actually was a Git repository. And you can see it says here, no such file or directory. So that means we removed the repository. So now we've got all our files and we're ready to get started. So inside here, I'm going to navigate into the backend, and I'm going to create a virtual environment so that we can install our dependencies. And let's just clear everything here. So we've got our env. I'm going to activate that with source env bin activate, and then I will say pip install -r requirements.txt. So that will install Django, the Django REST framework, and all the other requirements for the backend. And with that installed, you'll want to open up another terminal on your machine. I've just got one here open, and I'm going to navigate into the front end inside our application and go into GUI. And if we list everything in there, then we have the README, the package.json file. So that's basically the equivalent of our requirements. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say npm install, and that will install React and all the other packages that we need for the front end. Great, so let's just clear this out, and then we could run npm start. So this will start the front end, and then this will open up another tab which should have our localhost. Let's just see if we need to do this manually. So localhost there, and there we go. We just don't have any data because our backend isn't running yet. So let's go inside here. I'll just clear this out. And we're going to change into source and then run python manage.py run server. So now we've got the backend that is running, and let's just increase the settings there. Maybe just one out. Great. So now if we refresh our application, now we can see that the data is coming through. And so now I'm just going to close the GitHub tab, and I'm going to open the Django REST framework website in another tab here. And I'm going to go to API guide, this dropdown, and just go to the generic views. And so this is what we were using in the previous video to handle our API. So we were using the list API view, and we were using the retrieve API view. So it's quite important to understand that what it says here literally defines what this type of view is. So a list API view is used for read-only endpoints to represent a collection of model instances. So that then it tells us here provides a get method handler that means you can't post here. So you can't create a form that's going to post to the list API view. It's not going to work because this is a list view. It only provides a get method. If you want to post to the API, you need to make sure that you're using a method that handles post requests. So for example, list create API view provides a get and a post method handler. So that means that you could post to the list create API view. All you would have to do is import that, change the list view to this one, and then you could post to it. There you go. But so we're going to just handle things a little bit differently. So yeah, if we go to backend and our source and go to articles, API, and then views, you can see we have the article list view and the article detail view. Now, let's actually just make sure that our VS Code is in the right place. So if we, oh, not in there, let's make sure that we put it in our project. There we go. So now we get rid of those errors. And so you can see we have the article list view, the article detail view, and I'm actually just going to copy this view, the entire view, and just paste it. And this is going to be the article create view. So if we want just purely a create view, then let's look in the API documentation. We go to create API view, and this provides a post method handler. So only this method here. So I'm going to paste that there, and I'm going to import this slightly differently, just like that. So now we have the article create view. We specify everything the same as the other views here. And notice that we are repeating ourselves by doing this. So we will fix this, make it a lot cleaner in the end. But now we'll need to register the article create view inside our URLs. So we will also then just import everything a little bit better here. And we're going to specify the article create view in another path. So I'm just going to paste that there. And instead of primary key, it's going to be create with a slash. And I'm actually going to put that above the primary key, just so we don't get any errors on that. And we need to specify the create view as that view that must handle it. So we have the server that's running. So let's actually see if we go to the admin of our backend and we just log in so that we can see everything. Oh, let's make sure we get that right. And let's go to API. Then you can see we have these two articles at the moment. And if I go to API/create, now you can see we get a different view that's being displayed here. It says article create, and it's already giving us this error here. It says method get is not allowed, and that's because by pressing enter here, this is by default a get request, so that's why it's giving us that error. But if we were to post something here, it gives us this HTML form, or we could just use the raw data and then put our values inside this JSON dictionary over here. And so let's just, for example, test this out with there and post. And then we see we get a new ID, which is 3. So that means, well, if you took a look at the other ones, we had 1 and 2. So now we have 3, and we've got a new entry in the list. So the article create view works, and it was simply just by adding another view that is exactly the same as the other ones, except it's specifying the create API view that must handle it. So with that logic, we can do the same for the next two views, which will be the update view and the delete view. So let's just specify update view and delete view. And if we go to the generic views, we can see here we have destroy API view. So we'll get that. And then we can get the update API view. And then we'll just specify the update API view inside the article update view and the destroy API view in the article detail delete view. Everything remains the same. So we're basically, these 5 classes are exactly the same. The only difference is that the API view is different that handles it. So now we'll copy the article update view and the delete view, and we'll just bring those into the URLs. And then I'm going to take the primary key path, and I'm going to add a comma at the end there, and just paste it 2 more times. So the update view needs to take in an instance, and as well as the detail view, because you have to specify the instance of that view. So we'll put /update, and we'll put a slash on the end of that, and then we'll put /delete, just like that. So meaning if I go to 1/update, then it will take us to the update view, and if I specify 1/delete, then it will take us to the delete view. So let's check this out. Let's see if the server is working. It is. So let's go to the list view, and let's specify /1, and now you can see that it's got the article detail. It's displaying the detail view there. And let's go to /update, and now we get a form here, but it's saying detail method get is not allowed because we were getting this view, and we get this form. So let's update this. Let's say, for example, change this like that, and then we say put. Notice that put means we update something. So we click put, and now we can see that the ID of 1 has changed. It's got the title as change this, and the content is for example. So let's do this again. Let's just change this again, put, and then you can see it changes there again. So the update view is working, and if we just put delete, then it takes us to this delete view, and then there's a red button here to delete it. Again, it tells us the method get was not allowed, so we press delete, and are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. Go to the article list, and we only have number 2 and number 3, so number 1 was deleted. Great, so this is basically our API views, well, all our API views set up, but because we're repeating ourselves horribly, there's got to be a better way that we can achieve this, and there is. So if we go to the documentation, you can click on API guide and go to view sets. Now a view set essentially takes all of this and compiles it into one view set, so a set of views that achieves the same thing. So let's see how this works. So if you go to, just look at the example here, all they're doing is importing view sets from REST framework, and then you can specify the method on a class. But if we just scroll down a little bit here, then it says here, it gives us this example of a router. So basically you register a router to a certain URL path, you specify the view set, and then you can specify this base name as an extra parameter as well. And then you specify your URL patterns. So remember, in our URLs, we would specify URL patterns as a list of paths. This time, what you do is you set that equal to the router URLs. So essentially, Django REST Framework is doing all of this behind the scenes. So you don't need to specify all of that. So let's just take that right there, and let's just paste it here at the bottom. So this would be the view set. So let's grab this view set, the user view set, and let's go into views, and I'll go all the way to the bottom, and I'm going to comment all of this, and we won't even need any of that as well. And all we'll need is the import. So let's just see, we'll need that import there. So from REST framework, import view sets, and then we'll make this the article view set, which inherits from the model view set. So we can get rid of that comment there. And then we specify the serializer class, the same way that we always have. It's the article serializer, and then the query set is the article objects.all, making sure that we import all of that. And let's actually take all of those comments there, and we'll put them at the bottom, and we'll just move this around. So I'll keep them there so that you can see how much cleaner this is, and I'll move the REST framework import to the top, and there we go. So just notice how much cleaner that is. 9 lines of code that achieves all of that, which is quite insane. Obviously, this is because we're specifying all the views that you normally would, and that's what this model view set does. If you wanted to customize it a little bit more, then maybe you wouldn't use a view set. You would still use the generic views. So it's up to you, but for this purpose, it's much better. So we've got that. Let's go into urls.py, and again, I'm going to take that, and actually we'll take all of this, and we'll just come over here, paste it, and comment that out. And now we need to say from articles.api.views, import the article view set. And then that article view set is the view set that we register in the router, and we'll set the path to API. And the base name we'll set as articles. And then again, we're just setting URL patterns equal to the router URLs. And that seems to be it. So the server is still working. Let's test this out. Let's go to API. And it's showing us this area here for /API/API. So let's go to our settings URLs. And let's just get rid of, oh, sorry, not that. Let's keep that there in the URLs of our API. We'll set that just to an empty string. So now if we refresh this, and there we go. So our API path is still working, and we see that we get the list of them. And notice now how we have a post, or this create form, that's displaying on the article list. And that wasn't showing before. Before we had to go to article/create to see this, but now it's on this list view, which is set up for us. So let's go to the detail view of one of these just to show as well. So we go to /1, and now you can see that you have the update view, the delete view, and the retrieve view all in one. So meaning, well, we don't have the ID of 1 anymore, but if we go to 2, then you can see that it pre-populates the form. We have the delete option, we have the get option, and the put option. So it's basically combined all the different generic views into one type of view that handles all of those. And for this tutorial, or for this purpose, this is very nice. It's very clean and very simple to work with. So we'll actually end the backend tutorial here. This is all we needed to do to set up the create view, the update view, and the delete view. And now you've also seen how you can do it with a view set. So let's exit out of the backend, and I'm going to move the .vs code back inside the backend folder, and we'll just close all of that. And now we'll go into the front end, making sure that this is still running. We have that still running. And so now if we actually check our front end just to make sure that it's still working, it is. So it's still pulling all that data. And so now what we want to do is we want to handle all of those views that we've just created in the back end, but now in the front end. Now the way that we're going to handle the front end views is similar to how it looks here in our back end of the API. So for instance, the retrieve API view is merged with the delete view and the update view. So that's what we're going to try and achieve here, is by putting a form on the retrieve view that we can update the instance with, and then the option to delete it as well. And then for the list view, we'll try and add a form onto the list view to add more articles as well. So obviously you can do this in different ways, but this is the way that we're going to handle it so that it's similar to the way that it's being displayed right here. Now immediately, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a form that we can use to handle the actual creating or updating. So let's go to the &d framework and just look for form component. So we'll just click on getting started. And if we check here on the left-hand side and look for form, there we go. Now we'll check a bunch of these examples. And there's actually quite a lot here, but a lot of this we won't really need. So let's just keep going. And we'll most likely just want something like this that has these input placeholders. So something very basic. Just all it needs to have is just a title and a content field. So let's get the code there, and I'm going to just copy all of that. and we're going to go into the source folder, components, and we'll create a new file which we'll call the form.js. Just paste everything, and let's get rid of the React DOM part there. And if we go to the top, we're going to need to import React from React. And straight off of this, we're not going to need any of this form layout stuff. So I'm going to remove the constructor. I'm going to remove the handle form change layout. I'm going to remove this. And actually, I'm just going to get the render method there. I'll remove the layout there and remove those props. Remove the radio group. Remove the props, and remove those props there as well. And this looks more or less what we want, but let's just change the name here to custom form. And then at the bottom, we'll just say export default custom form. And let's actually just clean it a little bit so that it's all in one line. So this form item, okay, we don't need that form item. We've got the label for field A, which will change to title. And then the placeholder will be a title here. We'll change this label to be content. We'll change the placeholder to be into some content, something like that. And there we go. So that's more or less what we want. We don't need the radio import at the top. And so that seems fine. Now, the custom form component is what's going to be used as the form on the create view and the form on the update view. So what we need to do is we need to handle when that form is submitted. And because we're using it on more than one view, we'll need to specify when we are going to post something and when we're going to put something, so update something. So immediately, let's just grab this custom form and we'll go into the containers. We'll go to list API view or article list view, and let's import. Actually, we'll import it below the articles. So import custom form from components / form. And in this custom form, I'm just going to place below the articles, and I'm going to give it an h2 here, and it'll just say create an article, and I'm just going to put some space, so we'll put a break statement here, and then just paste the custom form component just like this. But now we're returning multiple elements, so we'll need to wrap this in a div, so we're only returning one element. And there we go. Let's see if this seems to be running. So let's go to the app, and if we refresh, now we can see we have this form here. So create an article, title, content. If you submit, nothing happens though. So, but if we do type, that automatic two-way binding is already handled for us, so that's quite nice. So now, to actually handle the submitting, we need to go to this button type, and we need to specify the HTML. Let's actually make sure we spell it right. HTML type, and set that equal to submit. So this type is the styling, and then HTML type is this, meaning that it is a submit type of button. So that's quite important. Like now, if we were to test this out, just refresh this, and if we click submit, then okay, so nothing's happening still, but this will help in the long run. So let's actually just handle the submit now. So we'll just go and define a method. This needs to be on our custom form though. I'm actually just going to tab everything in a little bit. There we go. So here I'm going to specify the handle form submit method. So we'll say handle form submit, and this is going to take an event, and it's going to perform some kind of function. And then we can take the method and we will specify the onSubmit property of the form. to be this dot handle form submit. Now to get the values that are coming through in these inputs, we first need to give them names. So we'll specify the name of the first one to be title. And I'm just going to copy that and add the second name to be content. So this is very important because we need the name of an input so that we can get it when the form is being submitted. And the way that we'll do that is we'll say the constant title equals to the event.target.elements, and then we put the name of the element that we want to get. So for example, title, and then say .value. And now if you paste this, you can get the content the same way by specifying content as the name of the input that you want to get. And let's just say console.log title content, and we need to say event.prevent default so that the form does not submit and the page doesn't reload. And so now if we just refresh this to make sure, and I'm just going to inspect here and go to the console so we can see it being logged out. So let's say test and all of that, submit, and then you can see it come through over here. So we see test and all of that. So that is the title and that is the content that's coming through on the form. So the form is working. Now let's see if we can add the form to the detail view. So if I go to a detail view, this is all that's being rendered out at the moment. Now let's add the option here to update this actual instance as well. So if we go back into the article detail container, then we'll basically want to do the same thing that we did right here. So we'll take the custom form input and just paste that there. And then the custom form I'm going to add at the bottom here after the card and just say custom form and then wrap this all in a div. And there we go. So now if we refresh this, now we get this form. And we can test it out as well and just submit, and then it's still being logged out. So the component itself works. We're using the form twice, and all we're doing is taking that form and importing it into the different views that we have, the article list view and the detail view. Now, when we click this submit button, what is actually going to happen? We want it to post or we want it to put. Now we'll need to specify on this component when it needs to post and when it needs to put, because they're completely different things, and each view only handles one of those methods. So we can't just post to a put API view, it's not going to work. So let's go into the form component, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that the handle form submit takes in another parameter, which is the request type, or you could say request method, whatever you want. And this request type is either going to be post, like that, or it's going to be put. So that's what's going to be inputted or used as one of the values for this request type parameter. So inside the handle form submit, I'm actually going to remove the console log, and I'm going to call a switch statement, and that is going to be on the request type. And we're going to put two cases. The first one is for post, and then we'll do some stuff there. And then the second case is for put, and then we'll do some stuff there as well. Now, we're going to use Axios to handle the requests. So let's import Axios here at the top. So we'll say import Axios from Axios, and there we go. Now, if it's a post request, then we want Axios to post. So we would say Axios.post, and then we need to put the URL. So that would be to our local host and port 8000/API. And there we go. And then the second parameter would just be the data that we're posting through. So this would be the title, and that would be the title that we grabbed here, this constant title, and then the content is the content that we just grabbed from the event target here. So these two parameters, or these two values, the title and the content, are then being posted in this Axios post request. And then we could just say then with the response console.log response, and then just catch the errors. So we'll say catch error and say console.error that error. There we go. And I'm going to copy that entire Axios request and paste it for the put view here, or the put method. And instead of post, it's going to be put, axios.put. And now we don't put to this URL because the put method needs an instance to actually post to. So that means that this would have to be /1, 2, 3, whatever the ID is of the article that we're viewing right now. So in here I'm going to just add this dynamically, and I'm going to change that to the tilde sign. Well, not the tilde, but the slightly weird inverted comma there. And inside there, I'm going to put article ID, which means this somehow needs to be handled, or actually placed inside our method. So we're going to add this as another parameter and say article ID. Now, if it's a post request, then the article ID doesn't exist, and that's fine. You just put null. If it's a put request, then the article ID is coming through, and the request type would be put, so then it would grab that article ID that's being submitted in the form. Now the title is the same, the content is the same because it's grabbing the values from the form the same way. And I'm going to leave the .then and .catch here as well. And so now I'll just add a slash on the end of this URL so that this is the end of it there. And that is it. That is our handle form submit. All it's doing is checking that the request type is either post or put, and then depending on which one is being handled, then it would either post or put. And so with that, we can then go down here to the form, and instead of calling the this.handle form submit, we now need to call this as an anonymous function. So I'm going to say with this event, so this syntax here means call this as an anonymous function, and it's going to call this.handle form submit, and it takes in the event, and it takes in the request type and the article ID. So I'm actually just going to just open this over multiple lines. So it takes the event, and then we need to pass in the request type, and we need to pass in the article ID. Now the way that we're going to do that is we're going to use the props of this component. So I'm going to say this .props .request type and this .props .article ID. So basically this means that when we specify this custom form component, we need to specify the request type and the article ID as two of the props values. So for example, on the article list view, here we're specifying the custom form component, and then we could come here and say request type equals to, and because this is on the article list view, this would be post, and then the article ID would equal to null. So there's no article ID, although you could enter one because it's first going to check the request type, so it doesn't actually matter what the article ID is, but because we don't have an article ID, we'll make it null. And then the same thing for the detail view. We'd come here, we'd specify request type and set that equal to put, and then specify the article ID equal to something. And this is actually the same thing here, this article ID. So I'm just going to copy that statement there. This.props.match parameters article ID. Now the last little touch that I'm going to add is just to display the value here, the submit text here. We're going to output this dynamically as well. So we'll get rid of that. And we're going to make it a property on the form as well. So we'll say this.props.button text. And button text we'll define on the component here. And we'll set it equal to, well, this will be create, because we're on the create form. And then here this would be update. So let's see if everything is working. It's failing. It's saying error is not defined in form. So let's just go up here, and this is meant to be, well, actually let's make this error to be more specific. And if we check that, it says error still not defined, and that's coming from over there. So error and that should be all good now. So let's just check that this is working. Okay, so it is displaying the form still. We're getting this little error here which is saying expected a default case and expected a break statement. So to fix the break statement, I'm just going to add a return in front of the Axios. So that should fix that part there. And then the expected a default case, I'm not going to handle a default case because there should only be one of the two. So I'm just going to leave it like that. And so let's go to the home view and let's try test this out. So let's say testing front end form here. If I say create, now it says here post 403 is so it's forbidden. And so this is an error that's coming from our backend, and that's because we don't have the permission to post here. And so this is more of an authentication issue. So the reason for this is because if we go into the backend, source, DJ React settings, and go all the way to the bottom, we have here default permission classes, and it's saying here REST framework.permissions .Django model permissions or anonymous read only. So this means that you have to be authenticated or you only get read only. And right now we are not authenticated with the server. So that means that we only get the read only permission and hence we can't post to the server. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment that out and I'm going to add a different permission here. Obviously this is not something that you would want to do, but just to make it work for the time being, then that's what we'll do. Handling authentication is a completely different thing, which we'll probably show in a future video. So if we go to the documentation here, and if we go to permissions, then we can read up a whole bunch of stuff on permissions. And so if we go all the way down, it says here setting the permission policy. So for example, is authenticated would mean you have to be authenticated. And then this is the one we're going to use for now, which is REST framework.permissions.allow any. So that means, well, allow any request. So I'm going to actually use that over here. And so let's go back to our application. Let's just refresh this. And let's actually check our API here. So we still only have these two. And I'm going to say testing again, click create, and then you can see here we get this data and it says ID is for content and the title. And if we go into our API view here on the server, now we can see we have this new entry. So it's working. We are posting from our front end and it's creating an entry on our back end, but it's not updating the display here. And that's because we are currently preventing the default event from occurring. And so if we just remove this, then it's going to execute all of this and then the server will refresh because that's what happens when you have a form that's submitted. So in this case, we actually do want the server or do want the page to reload. We're not housing any state that's that valuable, so it's okay if the page reloads. But what you could also do is you could just store all the articles in the state, which we are in the article list view, and then just add it to the state. And when they do happen to reload the page, then the state would go back to 0, but because it's reloading the page, it would then call the component did mount method and get all those articles anyway. So that's also something you could do if you really don't want the page to reload, but for this purpose it's fine. So let's just test this again to see it work properly. So we click create, the page reloads, and then we get this number 2 here. And if we click that, then it says test this again, and then we go refresh this, and there it is. So the create view is working. Now let's test out the update view. So if I go to this detail view, so /5, now we want to test updating it. So let's try that. We'll say see if this works. There, okay, so watch this text here. Let's see if it works. See if this works. There we go. So the create view and the update view are now working, and we've got a fully working CRUD application. We can create, we can update, we can retrieve, but we just haven't sorted the delete method yet, and that's not that difficult at all. So this will also be on the retrieve view. We'll just add a button here which says delete. And so the simplest way to do that would basically be to actually just be repeating this form, so adding another form. And so the simplest way to achieve this would just be to add another form component here, and inside the form it's just going to have one button. So I'm going to say button, and it's going to have an HTML type of submit, and it's going to say delete, and we're just going to specify the type, which is basically the styling. So we'll just say danger and see if that's one of them. And we're going to need this button that's imported, so we'll just come in front here. So button and card, see if that's working now. Now you've got delete, there it is showing there. And if we click it, then nothing's going to happen because the form isn't being handled. So let's say on submit equals to, and this is just going to be this dot handle delete, and we'll just take that method there, handle delete, and it's going to take an event, and it's going to basically do everything that the component did mount method does, except it's going to call Axios.delete, and it's going to go to that article ID, and then we don't need to set the state, so that's all that needs to achieve. So if we test this out, let's see if we just go and list everything and go to page 2. So we've only got 4, so if we delete this one, see if this works, and let's click delete. Now the page is not reloading and it's not redirecting us back to the list view, so that's something that you'll want to think about how to handle. And in terms of our state, that is also something that we can see is becoming a bit of a problem here. But one of the ways that we can handle this is by using the React rooterdom package. So we could just say this.props.history and then say .push to slash, so meaning if this page reloads, we click delete and it redirects us back to the list view. Now that's one way that we could do this, but the page isn't reloading by doing that. So if we go to this item, for example, click delete, it re-navigates us back here. It did delete it in the database. If we refresh this, there's only one left, but we'd have to refresh the page in order to see that. Now, you could use something like this.force update, and then that would force the page to reload, but it gets a bit messy this way. And so this is where I'm going to leave this video to make you think a little bit about this. You probably want to look at something called React Redux, and that's something that we'll probably integrate into this application in some coming videos. But if you enjoyed what you've seen so far and you felt like you've learned something new, then please leave a comment down below, and thanks for watching.